Hey guys, we're back for part 3 of the epoxy cross process. So I pulled it out of the mold. I did 2 layers. If you look really close, you can see the difference. One is solid, the other is kind of translucent. It has a cool 3D effect here. What I did is put tape on the back. So I pulled it out and I taped the back off, make sure everything was flat. The reason I did this is because after this next step, the 4th step, which I'm going to do both of these in the same video, is when I go to pour the clear coat over this, it's going to drip down like icicles in a way. And when it does drip down, it's going to harden, and I need to be able to cut those drips off. Well, if I don't have the tape on here, what the epoxy would like to do is kind of go under the corner, underneath it, around the corner and underneath it. And what it does, it will put like another layer of epoxy on the bottom, which I don't want. So when I get done with the drips here, I just cut them all off, and then I can just peel the tape up, and then this is going to be one solid piece without extra epoxy on this face of the cross. If there's something on the edge right here, it'll be easy just to chip off, and if it does go over, it's going to be on the top of the tape and not under the tape, so this will be one solid piece of epoxy without extra stuff getting on it. But what I'm about to do here with this router on my router table is I'm going to chamfer the edges. So if you look real close, you can see how it has a sharp corner there. They're at 90 degrees all the way around. But technically, when this was in the mold, it kind of ramped up on the sides. So if you look, you can kind of see how it curves upwards. So I'm going to do 2 passes on the router, and one is just going to kind of, it's going to put a beveled edge on here at a 45-degree angle with the chamfer. Now I'm going to go around it again because as I go around, the cross is going to start to tilt because of the chamfer and the way that the epoxy raised up on the edges. So after one pass, I'll do another pass to take that tilt out, and it'll be all smooth and consistent. So without further ado, I'm going to get started, and this is absolutely the messiest part of the entire process because epoxy chips get everywhere. So when I get done with this, I'm going to be dirty, and that's why I have an air compressor here to clean up, and I have a vacuum here to clean up the mess. So without further ado, let's get going here. Those top edges are getting caught. That's why it's jerking and not going smooth. And that's why I'm going to do 2 passes. Because right now it's very inconsistent. So that should have been smooth. That's it for the first pass. I'm going to stop and take a break because these chips, they're not super hot. They come off pretty warm because they were on a cutting blade. And honestly, I think I was routing it backwards. I think you're supposed to go the other way. I don't use this thing very often, but I'm going to learn it. Anyway, you can see it's really inconsistent. You have thin marks here and thicker ones over here on the beveled edge. And that's because I was telling you how the raised lip was, so that's why we're going to do 2 passes so everything's consistently the same and not 2 different thicknesses here. Get all this cleaned off. I told you this is a mess right here. All right, pass number 2. Let's go the other way. That's so much smoother. Yeah, this is the correct direction to go. Now, if you look closely, this looks 100% better and more consistent around the edges of the cross where the chamfer's at. It's all the same size chamfer now, and that's what I was going for, and that is why you do 2 passes. Now I'm gonna pause the video so I can clean up real quick, and then we'll continue here in a minute pouring the top coat. So let's stand by and call a timeout. All right, I just finished chamfering, cleaning up that mess, and now we're about to get going. What I did not show in the video, but I just did do, is I took my alcohol and I wiped down the entire cross and made sure it was completely clean. There's no debris, no dust, no nothing on it. So that way when I apply this epoxy, there's not gonna trap any debris in there. And the first thing I like to do is around the edges that is vertical is I paint on the epoxy with a brush, because what this does is breaks the surface tension of the edges. If you don't do that, you'll have your little droops and loops as they start to drip, and it won't be consistent around the edges. So the first thing I do is I hit up my edges, and I'm probably gonna make a mess here and get epoxy all over myself. But you come in here and you kind of paint it on just on the edges here so you can break up that surface tension. And what I'm gonna do is just show you this 2 sides real quick, and then I'm gonna pause the video to do the rest of it, so you're not watching me do this entire process. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to do. So give me 1 second here and just be patient with me as I work this in, breaking the surface tension along these edges here. And that way, I even hit the beveled edge, the little chamfer that I put on there a while ago. I hit those too. The only thing I don't need to break surface tension on is the top piece that's horizontal with the floor, or well, horizontal is equal with the floor, duh. Okay, but what I'm gonna do now, since I've already hit this side, I gotta rotate it, and I'm gonna hit all the sides. So I'll be right back. Un momento. All right, we're back. I just used the paintbrush to paint all the edges and the bevel, which is the chamfer. And I waited a little too long for this because this thing is super hot now and it's kind of gummy, and I should have poured it out a while back. But here we go for the clear coat. Whoa, it comes out real fast. You always want to pour more epoxy than what you think you're going to need, because you don't want to be short. So I have a little bit left over if needed, and what you simply do is just kind of spread it and let it flow over the edges. That way it spreads evenly, because if you don't let it flow over the edges, then you're going to have high and low spots, and you don't want that. So kind of let it flow over. This is self-leveling, plus gravity is going to take effect, and then just let it do its thing. It starts to fall. If there is bubbles on the top, you can pop them with a little torch or my heat gun if it'll reach without unplugging. Because I see some right here in the middle. Is it far enough to reach? There we go, popping those bubbles. I'm gonna turn it up higher so I can reach further. There they go, they're coming to the surface to pop. And actually, when you heat this back up even more, it makes the epoxy flow a little bit better. I'm trying to get these bubbles to pop. If they don't want to pop, then I'm just going to hit it with alcohol. And when you do that, it actually gives it like another effect. I'm just going to run around the edges real quick, kind of smooth this out because it is a little lumpy, but it did break surface tension, so that's good. That's what I wanted. Oh, well, what I was saying is, yeah, you'd rather have too much epoxy than not enough, because if you come up short and you have to mix more epoxy, by the time you get it to temperature and mix well and pour it on here, this thing's going to be so gummy, you're going to see a definite separation in the epoxy, and you don't want that because it's not going to look good. But dang, this thing's looking good. And then what I like to do is, on the bottom, I like to scrape the edges so I don't have too many drips, although they would be easy to break off once they're hardened and cured. Uh-oh. If you have to move it, go from underneath. You don't want to grab anywhere where there's wet epoxy if you don't have to. I'm just trying to scoop the edges up here a little bit. You will have a lot of spillover, but that's part of the process. Oh, and this is really, really, really gummy, and I am making a mess over here. Yeah, this is so gummy, I should have poured this 10 degrees ago when I looked at it. I wasn't paying attention to the time or the temperature of the epoxy, and I should have poured it around 95 degrees, and I just checked it right before I poured it, and it was already 115. That should be flowing like water right now. It looks like it's corn syrup or molasses, and it should not be moving that slow, but it'd be all right. I just gotta make sure the edges look pretty good. I'm gonna try to heat it up a little bit just to let it flow over, kind of like water, but you have a preview there of what it's going to look like later on. So check it out. That's going to look beautiful when it's finished. That's basically your preview of the final product.